Ladies and gentlemen, in the interest of speeding things along, I'm going to be as brief as I can on two extremely important topics. If you have the Citizens Rule Book, this is where I want you to go right now, and please follow along on two types of nullification. The word nullify means to cancel, to make null and void. You, as a citizen, could be called for jury duty. I have on two different occasions, three different occasions actually. Because I teach government, I slowly, because I'm stupid, began to realize that what the Constitution says and what our government does are two different things. I came under the understanding about jury nullification. You have all heard this. The judge speaks to the jury and says, "Do you see Mr. Smith here? He's been accused of hiding a runaway slave." Let's pretend it's 1855. This is against the law. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, your job is not to decide whether or not the law, hiding a runaway slave, is just or unjust. Your job is to simply decide whether Mr. Jones or Mr. Smith has been hiding a runaway slave. That is nonsense. It is laid out perfectly here in this Citizens Rule Book. Jury nullification is a right of a juror to judge not only the facts but also the law. And you only need one juror to stop a conviction if a person is being subjected to an unjust and tyrannical law. And let me give you a perfect example, and not something from 150 years ago of hiding a runaway slave, which, if you want to know, in Wisconsin, juries refuse to convict people on the Underground Railroad. They refuse to do so. Right now, raw milk produced by the Amish, they are being seized, arrested, and fined because they've got chickens and pigs and cows that produce eggs and milk outside of the control of the government regulations, where they want these animals injected with steroids. They are being arrested and fined. Now, you don't know this unless you dig hard on the internet. A jury, you might be in front of a jury. You might be a juror sometime and facing a tyrannical law, and your friends and neighbors are going to be victims of an unjust law. The judge is going to ask you, do you understand? Now, as a juror, you can say, yes, I understand. You don't have to say, yes, I will obey. And it's in the 7th Amendment. It says, the jurors may not be questioned in any other place outside of the common law. Now, the common law means that a juror can't take bribes. A juror can't discuss the case outside the courtroom. I mean, it's been established by tradition. Those kind of things that can be asked. Did you take a bribe? Did you discuss the case with somebody outside of the court? But they can't ask, did you obey the judge's instructions? That is jury nullification. If a criminal has read their rights, why aren't jurors? This has a long history in America, in American and Anglo-Saxon law. It's one of the Declaration of Independent Complaints. It says the king has transported us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses. This is because juries refused to convict smuggling Americans because they knew that the king's laws and tariffs and taxes were unjust. So the king brought them across the sea to be tried in England, where there were sympathetic juries. So it's one of the events that led to the revolution. And that is the king trying to circumvent jury nullification. Inform yourself, because I'm going to tell you what happened when I went to jury. They asked the jury pool, and they could be as big as the people in this audience. How many of you know the defendant? Raise your hand. You're under oath now. Okay. A few of you do. You're going to be excused. How many of you know the plaintiff? Your hands go up. You're going to be excused. How many of you know the judge personally? Or the defense attorney? Or the prosecuting attorney? And then they're going to ask, and this happened, how many of you believe in jury nullification? Well, my hand went up, about 2 or 3 others. I was called into the judge's chambers with the two opposing attorneys. They said, Mr. Byrd, would you explain what jury nullification is? And I said, yeah. I said, that means jurors can judge the law as well as the facts. And I said, looks like a just law in this case. You don't have to worry about me. But they don't want jurors that they can't control. One person out of 12 can stop an unjust law from being enforced. That is the power you have. Inform yourself and get yourself well read at fija.org. fija.org. It is well documented, gives you all the examples in recent times and in ancient times, medieval times, colonial times. fij.org. Now with that, I'm going to talk about state nullification. It is happening all over the place. Bill Walker, if you become governor, know this. The states have a long tradition of utterly ignoring tyrannical federal laws. Wisconsin nullified the fugitive slave law in 1858. Virginia and Kentucky, seeing a tyrannical attack on freedom of speech, and with a resolution written by James Madison, the father of the Constitution, and Thomas Jefferson, the father of the Declaration, those states said, your Sedition Act will not be enforced in Virginia and Kentucky. And we will use the power of the militia or our local sheriffs to order you out. You don't realize this, but people were arrested for criticizing President John Adams. They had their printing presses seized. It was against the law. But John Adams is a great hero. There he was. You put a man into power, you don't know what he's going to do. And Thomas Jefferson, when he was in power, did some things that were unconstitutional, like the Embargo Act. And New England nullified the Embargo Act. They said, we are going to continue trade. That's our livelihood here in New England.